All opinions expressed by Joshua and by podcast participants are solely their own.
Welcome back. I'm Joshua Wilson, and with me today is my friend Joe Moss, and we're going to be talking AdvisorTech. You know, I don't know about some of you all, but sometimes I get a little touch of tech exhaustion. But at the same time, I can look away from it for a little bit, but I got to know what's happening, what's coming up next. And Joe's one of my favorite follows on LinkedIn that just kind of helped me to trickle in a little bit of information as it comes out and kind of stay up to date with what's happening. And Joe's been looking at AI a lot. He's looking at new tools that come out. He's comparing tools. And so I wanted to get Joe on the show to really talk about what's coming. There's been a lot of new things that have come out. What does he see that's really spectacular? What are the things that he thinks that are really going to make a splash in 2025? Maybe what are some of those things that he thinks maybe are a little bit overhyped and played out? And let's maybe hear some of his current best picks for a few things. I think that the hot topic is always CRMs, but we'll get into some of the cool tools that are coming out and go from there. Now, if you don't know Joe, he is on LinkedIn, but he's also the COO of January Capital Partners. And he's really just kind of a troublemaker in the fractional industry. He's also with Connector, which is a school community that teaches advisors how to do their job. He writes an email newsletter. He makes a lot of useful lists for a variety of things that have to do with wealth management. And really just is always trying to convince people to start a school community. You'll find him posting on LinkedIn. He's always scheduling tech demos. He's talking to advisors about their tech. He's promoting the community, his school community and community in general. So he's really a community instigator, which is one of the things that really attracted me to go to Joe. He's a West Virginia native. Now I believe he's in Lexington, Kentucky. Wife, 3 kids, big reader, and I'm just super happy to have my friend on the pod today. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into all this. It's all my favorite stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, I kind of wanted to start with, what's hot right now. I mean, obviously, I see AI is kind of what everybody hears right now. So, can you talk about AI, about what's hot, and also kind of divvy this up about what do you see as maybe overhyped versus, hey, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, AI is definitely hot for financial advisors. I think the number of tools that have come out for in AdvisorTech with some AI component to it has been shocking. Especially, I feel like the Y Combinator program. If someone comes and says, "Hey, I've got an AI product for financial advisors," they're like, "You're in. Here you go." So I think that's maybe the overhyped part of things. But AI in general, I do think is going to transform AdvisorTech and the way that advisors operate their businesses. It's just going to take a few years for the hype to settle, I suppose.
Where is AI proving to be the most useful already versus, hey, we're still trying to, this is promises, but where is it already being, really being found useful?
Yeah, so the number one way is the meeting note taker. There were AI meeting note takers that are not industry specific, and then there's 13 or so that are specifically for financial advisors. And very simply, they record a meeting, they transcribe a meeting, and they summarize a meeting. And then they also create follow-up items that can be synced with the CRM for advisors to follow up on. So that's a very straightforward, simple use case. I think the main thing to watch out for there is just the accuracy of the summary, the accuracy of how the notes that it pulls out and the tasks that it pulls out. I've seen some of them where they can't figure out who the advisor is and who the client is. So like everything's mixed up, and that's basically useless.
Yeah.
So I think accuracy is incredibly important when it comes to AI for advisors for meeting note taking. Mm-hmm. And specifically even the meeting type. So like if it's a introductory meeting, if it's a discovery meeting, if it's a annual review meeting, like if the AI has a template for each one of those meetings, has words that it's looking out for, has a certain flow that the advisor typically runs the meeting, like that helps it to be more accurate.
Yeah, I think that advisors want plug and play, and some of those things are tough when you're given a tool and it's not already properly configured, and you're not kind of selecting with a few things. And I guess that comes to the prompt or the programming beforehand. If you're, I think we just want to click a button, and start. And sometimes it's not as simple as just clicking. Like this is I click record, starts recording. That was pretty much it. Very, 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 very few things before that. And that can be a big deal. Are there any tools for that note taking that you've reviewed that have really stood out to you as far as accuracy or simplicity of setup, just getting right to it?
Yeah, so I am slightly biased because I do marketing for certain AdvisorTech companies. So I've been working for FinMate AI for longer than a year. So my bias is towards FinMate, but I think Jump's also doing very well. I really like what Vega Minds is doing. They're doing more than just the meeting note taking. They're also doing like email auto drafting. So anytime a client emails an advisor, it takes everything it knows about the client and will auto draft emails back. So the advisor opens up their email and they've got like automatic replies to any emails that they've received from clients, which is kind of cool. It gives them a head start.
That's pretty cool, especially if you're using it the right way and you're actually reading that email and making sure. I mean, I think that we think of AI so much as, well, what's it going to do for me? Is like, well, I mean, is it not super useful if it cuts down 90% of the task for you, or 80% of the task, or even 50% of the task? It's not perfect, but if you consider it a draft. Some of the concerns that I've heard folks express, and recently was recently a conversation this week about it with a firm that just doesn't allow AI, and the concern is that everything goes to the large language model. We don't own the information. They have everything, so they can't really use anything. They can't use AI, and I think that that's wrong because first off. I have two opinions on this. Number one, from the big picture is, if you're using AI to help you draft stuff and it's not client material, there's nothing about specifically the client, nothing identifying in there. It's like, I'm going to share. I don't want to share with AI my marketing slick, a week before it comes out because it can train its model on it. I'm like, okay, you are way, way, way too worried about this, because trust me, your marketing is not so unique that AI is not going to learn it and it's going to be on everybody else's website before it's on yours. So I'd say that. But I do understand, however, the concern if it's linked to client information. So these AI tools that you're talking about, is it, and please help me with the terminology. This is one part I don't understand is it the right place in-house, or is it not exposed? Is it something that sits on your server, so it's not being fed out into something else? Like, is it just considering yours, or so it's just being trained on your data? It's not taking other outside data. It's going to be like pre-trained on outside data and then adding yours. Can you kind of explain that to us especially from a compliance standpoint?
Sure. I'm not necessarily like an AI expert, but from what I understand is, there's like ChatGPT, which is pulling from huge amounts of publicly available data. But then there's AI, I believe it's called RAG, where you basically, it will only pull from the information that you give it. So as an example, I built a Kits' GPT, which basically I said, read through everything on the kitses.com website, and then I'll ask you questions about the source material. But its only source is the Kits' website. So it's
cool.
That's limiting, but it's also good because that's only the only thing it's pulling from. I think sometimes it's nice to have a combination of like publicly available information and a very specific source, because then you kind of get this specificity, but you also get a bit of the public knowledge to like flesh in the gaps. Because sometimes it'll come back and just be like, I don't know what you're asking. If it's only pulling from very specific information.
Yeah, that's understandable. The but so these tools that you're talking about, I forget all of them, Vegaminds and these other tools,
Yeah,
they're not sharing any of your information with outside sources. It's all within your own wrapper.
that's debatable. I'm not. I don't know who. I don't know. I don't know that I'm necessarily qualified to speak on that. I know FinMate specifically is incredibly careful about the data that where the data goes, who sees the data, who has access to the data. They delete everything at a regular cadence so that they're not holding on to anything very long. Obviously, some of the other AIs, definitely like Zoom AI or the bigger ones, I mean, they're using your client data probably to help train their models. And I think the tools that specifically say we're not taking your meeting notes and training our model with it are the ones that advisors need to find and use for their client meetings.
Yeah. So you're saying that so that's a big takeaway here is with no AI note takers is ones that specifically look for ones that don't use the client data to train. There's a difference in taking the notes from a meeting and just transcribing them and putting them in your CRM versus taking these notes and then now pushing it into a model that's retraining the model.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you do have to be careful about that, which I think is a downside, or not a downside. It's one of the parts of AI that financial advisors need to be very careful about is, all this information that's being collected, who does have access to it after the fact.
Right. Makes sense. So, one of the things that's always seems to come up with this stuff is we hear about tools and they sound exciting and what they're going to do. And, I was reviewing a website even recently for a client, and man, it's just the user interface. Like what your actual experience was. And I know what you can do, but man, it feels like it's hard to do it. So talk about the user interface on some of the tools you've been reviewing here, and feel free to go outside of AI tool, the AI and things like that. This is a tech conversation. We started with AI, but let's talk about good user interface and what that means to you, and what tools you're seeing this in, and especially tools that are improving. But yeah, let's talk about user interface.
Cool. Yeah, so I think I just recently came across a couple of quotes that were like, technology should be so good that it fades into the background, or you forget you're even using it. You're so in sync with your tool that you're just cranking out work. You can get into flow state. Things like loading speed, absolutely will kill your flow state. Like if you're trying to type emails and you click the next email and it takes a few seconds for the email to pop up, delays like that will slow your brain down. And especially when you're used to working with good tech, slow tech really stands out. It's like you're on a dial-up modem or something. So I think speed of the experience is very important. Just how it looks, I think that more and more people are getting used to interacting with technology that looks really good and is very intuitive to where to go for different things. If the font's too big, or if just parts of it seem disproportional, I suppose it's more like graphic design type stuff. But I think speed, how it looks, and then just usability. So if you come to a tool and you're like, my goal is to do this, how many clicks do you have to do to get the end result? And some tools are really convoluted. You got to do all kinds of manipulations to get what you're looking for, and others just make it effortless.
This is one of the things that when I'm working with advisors and I'm looking at their websites or looking at whatever it is they've built, is I'm thinking every single click, every single move, every single expectation is losing people.
Right.
It's got to feel like you're falling downhill, where it's just it's just natural. If there's ever a point where I'm not just kind of moving into it. I was talking to some advisors recently, and they had a situation where they hit a point where there's so many options. And when I'm looking at this stuff, I always say, no, I don't want you to walk me through anything. I don't want any walkthroughs. I want you to hand it to me, because if I have you walk me through it, then like you're kind of like walking me down the mountain. I don't want to be walking down the mountain. I want to see if I can just roll down the mountain without any help.
Okay.
Right. So I want to see, my first impression of this is where am I getting hung up? And it's like, well, yeah, I can explain. No. You already failed. When you told me I can explain, like, no, I'm already hung up. Like the whole point of this is it doesn't have to be explained to me. I can just roll down the mountain with this. And in this particular instance, it was just because there was so many options. And now I'm reviewing every option, and every single option I'm reviewing to decide which one I'm going to click on was something that at this stage in the client journey anyway. There's other times where the stage of the client journey matters. But at this stage when I'm still not fully invested in whether I'm going to keep moving forward. Right. There's certain things you can do deeper into the relationship, right? When you're deep and you're invested, that you can require a little bit more. But early on, it's got to be I'm still deciding how much I want to invest. Have you? So this is more theoretical that we're talking about, and more the process of what makes it successful. Let's dig into some tools. What do you want to talk about today, Joe? That you've been looking at when it comes to tools. Let's pick a category. Whether it's CRMs or something like that, and let's talk about what you're seeing and who you're really appreciating right now. Sure.
CRMs is a great one because it's kind of the most highly adopted, most used of the AdvisorTech stack. The clear leaders have been like Redtail, Wealthbox, Salesforce, and down the line. And I think that what I'm excited about is maybe some of the newer players that are coming up that are using AI or using it more heavily. I think Wealthbox has started launching some AI features. So like you can just give it a prompt and say, I want to see this kind of report, and it will auto build the report for you. That's the kind of stuff I think is incredibly useful, because when you have to build a report from a CRM and like pick every single column that's going to end up in your final like export, that's really tedious. But if you can just say, hey, I want a report of all my clients that have over $1 million AUM or something, and ones that are paying fees of greater than $10K a year or something, like, and it automatically pulls that report. Like, that's an incredibly useful way to use AI with hard data like a CRM.
So one of my hangups with CRMs, Joe, and as you know, I've consulted with many firms and help them to grow, help them to kind of clean up their base. And I can't think of one firm in particular, but this has happened with multiple firms, is people start out with a tool that's so powerful, and they're not really trained on it, or the first few people get trained on it, and then they have some natural attrition, and then 2 years later they've got people using a tool that are just kind of handed a tool. They don't know how to do things, so people start kind of putting bubble gum here, and then some super glue over here, and the little duct tape over here, and suddenly you've got a tool that's very powerful that's really broken, and things aren't talking to each other. And it's not picking on Salesforce because it's very powerful, but I'm just thinking of one situation where it was just such a mess in Salesforce because it was so powerful, and so many people had hands in it, and it's not about a tool's potential. I mean, part of it is about the potential to screw it up and how easy and intuitive it is to create these changes. So, we end up having to spend a lot of money to just like figure out why things were broken and then retool them. So, have you noticed anything about that kind of? I almost think about, I want a tool that is not going to be easily broken, and you kind of want those advanced features at times, but sometimes a lot of these things that are sold to you being so powerful, they don't end up getting used because they're not easy enough to use, they're not intuitive enough to use. We just want to use it. No one wants to learn it, right? Yeah. What have you thought? What have you seen as far as some of these CRMs is like? Hey, this is easy, and maybe it's some stuff that that I looked at 3 years ago that it's changed very quickly, but Talk about kind of that ease of use and maybe the of out of the box use, and but just the ease.
Yeah. No, so it's interesting. If we're going to talk about the top three options, I've seen people go from Redtail to WealthBox, from WealthBox to Redtail, from both of those to Salesforce, back to. I've seen transitions in every direction, and people even moving and then switching back. So it is not necessarily. I mean, there's definitely tools that have pros and cons versus others, but it's not necessarily the tool entirely. It's how well they're using the tool, which is kind of what you were alluding to. Like if someone has a CRM, but the data is not up to date, it almost becomes useless. If it's like, yeah, we put all our contacts in the CRM, but we don't know who's a client, who's not a client. We've got prospects that became clients, but they're still listed as prospects. And it's like, you can't run accurate reports if your data's not kept up to date. I think I detoured from your original question, but you want to remind me what it was?
Yeah, so I'm thinking in terms of kind of those. We agree that it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to get to make things more convoluted. I'm thinking about, okay, what are the tools that are easiest to use or the most intuitive to use? And maybe it's different types of advisors. As if you're an advisor that's X, this is the kind of business you run. This is one of the things I enjoy about talking to you, Joe, is you've worked in different businesses, as have I. So I've seen advisors with different types of businesses. And so when you start doing that, you start learning the lay of the land of, hey, people tend to think of to want to sell you a car. It's like, hey, what kind of car should you buy? And I'm like, well, I have a truck, and I have a specific truck, and I love my truck, so I can tell you why you should buy my truck. The same truck I own, because it's what I use. And so that somebody falls in love with the truck. Well, I need that truck that Joshua has. He loves that truck, and he told me what was great about it. And it's like, okay, but I don't really have the expertise to come ask you, Joe, like, okay, let me ask you these questions about. If you ask me about my expertise in automobiles, I can sell you my truck, but I can't explain to you what automobile you should buy. Right. I'm not going to have the expertise to ask you the questions and say like, okay, Joe, what is this? Well, Joe wants to haul his three kids around. I don't know. I don't know what car to lead you to. I don't know anything about those things. So it's, I think I'm thinking more about, what the differences of advisors and kind of how maybe different tools might work better for different businesses. These are kind of the general things you should be thinking of when I think WealthBox or when I think some of these newer tools. Like, hey, this new tool comes out, and if you're the type of advisor who X and Y and Z, then maybe you ought to be looking at this tool because here's what makes it good for a advisor that also sells annuities and has to have this other system, or maybe this advisor that's bringing in separate teams and they all have different, that sort of thing is, how should advisors be looking at these new tools compared to the existing CRMs and saying, based on my business, this is more appropriate for me. Don't just sell me the tool, but tell me why should I think about that tool?
Yeah. So a really specific example is, advisors that sell annuities or insurance, and that's their main source of revenue. They tend to do much higher volumes, and they also tend to do seminars and chicken dinners and stuff like that. So some CRMs have seminar capabilities built in, so you can host an event, you can track the attendees, you can track who came, who didn't come, who filled out the form at the end of the seminar to get a first appointment. So some firms were comparing WealthBox to Redtail, and at the time, Redtail had a seminar feature and WealthBox didn't, so we would point them towards Redtail. But now there's LeadCenter.ai, which is way more robust than Redtail, which is a pro and also a con because it has a zillion features. But the seminar part of it is if you were comparing those three and you wanted to do a lot of high volume seminars, I would say go with Lead Center. So it does depend, who what you're doing for marketing, how many people are you working with, what's the volumes, and what types of events are you holding to decide what CRM is best for you.
That's a really interesting point, is that the type of marketing that you're doing is certain of these tools are better for different types of marketing. So you said lead center, for more of that advisor that's doing the seminar type marketing. Do you have other thoughts on other CRMs for different types of marketing or?
Yeah, no, good question. My favorite marketing platform is LinkedIn. So when I'm looking for a CRM, I'm looking for a CRM that has a fantastic LinkedIn integration. And
Okay.
Redtail, Wealthbox, Lead Center, none of them have LinkedIn integration. So for me, they're incredibly frustrating because I want to go to a LinkedIn profile and click a button, and that profile now becomes a contact in my CRM, which I feel like that feature set should be in every single CRM. But so I'm looking for a CRM that's very good at LinkedIn, and the one I chose was NetHunt CRM. So
it's called what?
NetHunt.
NetHunt. Okay.
NetHunt CRM. It's very simple. It's built on top of Gmail, but it has an excellent LinkedIn integration. And so when you're on LinkedIn and you connect a profile to your CRM, then there's a box that shows up next to the LinkedIn profile where you can add tags, you can add email addresses, you can basically work on the data that's in your CRM right on LinkedIn. So for me, that's incredible.
And is that something that's specific to advisor business, or is this just a CRM in general that you're using?
Yeah, this is a CRM in general. It's it was just another specific example of if you do a lot of LinkedIn marketing, you need a CRM that's good at LinkedIn.
So do you see, and maybe this is you, or maybe that's what you'd kind of imagine, does this have to be the primary CRM, or are people doing multiple CRMs? Two CRMs seems a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a debate about do you need a service CRM and a marketing CRM? Because advisors that do a lot of marketing will lean towards HubSpot or Keep or one of the more markety type CRMs.
Yeah.
Whereas Redtail and Wealthbox are much more service CRMs. So a lot of advisors are running two CRMs. One's maybe more for leads and prospects, and then the other one's for when someone becomes a client. This is where we keep all their financial data, and this is where we keep the workflows and the tasks and the meeting prep and the meeting follow-up and that kind of stuff. But when you have two systems, you do need a source of truth. So whenever you're running two databases simultaneously, now people don't know, okay, this person was a lead and we wrote in this phone number, but they're also in this CRM and they've got a different phone number. Which one's their actual phone number? So it's definitely
giving me anxiety, Joe.
There's definitely cons in running more than one CRM.
Yeah. So I guess I was trying to picture this as this, what'd you call it? Not Lead Center, the one that was good for LinkedIn. Is if someone is doing LinkedIn marketing, does it make sense to that's just maybe you're using that just for LinkedIn. And I also think obviously this is about the size of the firm too. If you're one person doing this or three people doing this, multiple CRMs versus you're getting to be a sizable firm and you've truly you're going to need to have a professional dedicated to making sure that these two things are talking to each other very well. Because now you got to really have CRM integration to where you change over here, and I'm not really sure that a lot of CRMs are trying to integrate with other CRMs.
No, yeah, it's I'm not recommending having two CRMs. Yeah. Some people are solving this whole marketing problem, service problem with two CRMs. Ideally, you have one, and maybe we'll get to this, but ideally you have not only one CRM, but one tool that does more than CRM. Maybe it does some financial planning and some trading and some more like an all-in-one, and also does your meeting note-taking so that automatically gets sent to your contact record. So I think that is hopefully where things are moving is systems that are much more fully developed around exactly what advisors need versus, stringing together 20 different tools in order to run a business, which is painful.
It felt like, it's been almost a year, but I had a client and I had access to it because of the work that I was doing that was in Advison. And that was my first user experience of Advison. And, I didn't need the full capabilities, but I got to see what they were doing. And it seemed like that was kind of, the all encompassing type of thing where they could do all the trading, and it was, then you could also function as a CRM, the note taking, all the things. Now, I didn't use it long enough to feel like I was good at it. But here's the thing I did appreciate about the experience that I had, was I was kind of dropped in it. Right. And I think that my experience was a typical experience. Is you go to a new firm, they've got a CRM you've never used, and it's like, okay, we'll train you on this. And it's like, okay, you get a half hour from this guy, then you get a half hour from this gal, and then it's like, I have a gal that gives me an advisor overview, and then I've got the guy that gives me the back office overview. And I've got a total of an hour and 20 minutes training or something like that, training on this. And now I'm, in the system. That's pretty typical, and it was so powerful. There was so much it could do that it did feel a little overwhelming, but the back office absolutely loved it. The advisors tended to feel like there was too much going on, even though they didn't have access to everything. Sure. It almost just felt like even the dashboard was a little overwhelming, and that's a tough one, because anytime you're changing, it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's just that uncomfortable. I don't like it because it's different. I don't know. My eyes aren't trained to even know where to go. I have to engage.
Yeah. No, I mean, the firm that I'm in the COO at right now, we moved from Orion Redtail to Advison, and I like to say it's 4 times better for half the price. It's massive improvement over our previous experience.
Yeah. Well, why is Advison so much better than Orion?
It's way more intuitive. I really did not like using Orion. Anytime I had to use Orion, like one time I wanted to run a report, so I couldn't figure out how to run the report. So I started chatting, and they're like, "You need to run report 67824," and I'm like, "Great, that's useless information. How do I run this report number?" And they're like, "Oh, you go here and then here." The UI is terrible in my opinion. Where with Advison, it's like, it's very straightforward. It's like you go here for households, here for clients, here for accounts. You go here to do your trading. You go here for reporting. It's just
and even with the advisors, it's you click this and this, and you can generate a report very easily. You're already here, and as long as you can kind of think about your workflow, if you're trying to jump over to a different workflow in the middle of something, like you got to kind of, my vision was you kind of have to start over in your workflow. Okay, normally I'd start here, then here, then here, but it's like the next task was always they did a really good job of thinking about what's the possible next step. If an advisor is on this screen and looking at these things, he's either going to want to report, send this, email this to a client. Like they've already kind of thought about those things. That was really nice about it, is the potential next steps were very, very thought through. So I felt like that Advison was easy for me to, well, when I say easy, I don't want to overuse that word because, it's not, you got to think about it, but it was easy for me to figure out.
Right.
And then I also felt like that the instruction, now, first off, the gal running the back office was an absolutely amazing at it and very comfortable with Advison. So part of it could be her. She could very easily tell me, boom, boom, here. And it was easy to get into it.
Yeah. No, it has the highest satisfaction rating on, I believe, Kitces and the Veris surveys of industry-specific tools. Don't quote me on that. I think I wrote an article on it, and it was like number 2 in both, but the number 1 option was in the one was like non-industry specific.
Yeah.
And the other one was I discounted it for some reason. I can't remember why, but
that's cool.
Yeah, and I think it's when you're looking for AdvisorTech, obviously review those two surveys is a wonderful place to start. And I would look at satisfaction rating over market share. Because you'll often see that the firms with the largest market share typically do not have the highest satisfaction rating. So I would sort by satisfaction rating first, like factor in market share, especially if you're a larger firm, because you also don't want to like build your whole business around a tool and then that tool gets bought or goes away in a couple of years. So I think like the larger the firm, the more solid of a tool they might need to choose. But it is very interesting to look at market share versus satisfaction score and compare those two.
Yeah. No, it's oftentimes, when we're looking at different types of tools, and let's expand outside of CRMs and think about tools that advisors are using as well. Oftentimes advisors are saying, okay, this tool, is it better? Is it do something different? Is it do something completely new that I didn't know I needed? And so it's just cheaper. Hey, I've kind of got used to this. If I could do the same thing for cheaper. So let's talk about that kind of cheaper versus better. And maybe some things are more expensive and it doesn't really feel like you're getting more out of it. So let's talk about the money investment versus what you get, the value of these tools.
Yeah. No, that's funny. So I did one on risk tolerance questionnaires because we were picking a risk tolerance tool. And I broke it down exactly like that. Like these tools are the most expensive. So like the value per dollar is really low. These tools are like, they got a lot of good features, but they're middle priced. And then you've got some cheap tools that are either like very simple and do something very simple very well, or they're cheap and they do a lot of things, but maybe more than you need. So there's like a value per dollar spent. And I ended up
that's awesome. So give us some tools and tell us what category they're in that you're like, hey, this is my most probably overpriced tools for what you actually get.
Sure. Well, so like in risk tolerance, nitrogen is one of the well-known, way overpriced tools. But it also was like the industry leader. It changed a lot of advisors' the whole prospecting process. Honestly, when I first started using it, when I came into the industry, I thought it was amazing. So I was like, man, this is so cool to like get a risk score on a prospect's current portfolio and then compare it to what ours is. And then it had the GPA score, which I loved, which was basically saying for the risks that you're taking, how much return are you getting? So like over 4 GPA was like, you're getting good return for the risk you're taking. And if it had like a 1 or a 2, it was like, this is a horrible portfolio.
Right.
So that I really liked. Stratify, I think, is also up there as very expensive, but there's a pricing thing where if you have a lot of users, I think Stratify becomes much cheaper than Nitrogen because Nitrogen's like price per user is pretty high, where Stratify has like a high starting price, but you can add a lot of users without the price going up significantly. Then coming down into like the middle range tools, I don't know them from memory, but like my favorite in the middle range was Tolerisk because I feel like it had a lot of really good features, including tolerance for risk and capacity for risk. So tolerance is just like, how much risk are you comfortable taking in the market? But capacity is, I've got $2 million and I don't have any, short-term needs like buying a house or something. So my capacity for risk is really high, even though my tolerance might be lower, but it caps it at your tolerance instead of your capacity. But the reverse can happen. Like someone can have a huge capacity or a huge tolerance for risk, but their capacity is like really small because they only have.
I really like that conversation. And I've always really liked that. Having that in a tool would be great because that conversation is not had enough. I believe with advisors, and I want to make higher returns. Okay, well, that would require more risk, and let's see if you can actually take that risk. Versus, I'm scared about this. What if this? What if this? And it's like, listen, man, you're taking $3,000 a month, and you've got $3 million. you got plenty of risk capacity. You're okay. You're okay. So, this doesn't all need to be allocated this way. But yeah, those that difference is it would be cool to see. What about outside of the risk tolerance software? Your most valuable tools or most overpriced tools?
It's a good question. Now I'm going to want to look at the report I did of like my favorite tool in every category. Like financial planning, e-money is basically the way I say it. If the company is old, expensive, and poor user experience, like those three typically go together. They also typically have market share, although that's changing now. I feel like as the younger, better tools are moving up. But yeah, a lot of times it's like the older players that have market share that cost too much, and there's much better tools for much cheaper.
So what are those tools that are better, cheaper?
Well, so like for a while it was Right Capital. Right Capital was like the cheaper, it was like a third of the price, much easier to use, much simpler. Down even now to like Projection Lab and Bolden, and there's some fairly inexpensive retirement planning tools that, the UI is excellent. The price is way down there. So they can be really good options for certain types of advisors.
Any type in particular for some of these tools?
Any types of advisors?
Yeah, like you say, well, this tool is great for certain types of advisors. Like what tool, what type of advisor?
Okay, yeah. So there's one advisor. His name is Trent. He runs a retirement planning club. So he's got 1,000 clients in his club, and it's a bit more DIY. So as part of the membership in his retirement planning club, he gives them 3 different tools as part of it. So he gives them, I believe it's Bolden, Income Lab, and Right Capital. So basically, as part of their membership, they get access to these tools and they kind of pick which one's their favorite, I believe.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're interested in running a one-to-many financial planning, retirement planning type of offer, which I think is becoming, it's coming. It's still proving itself, but I think there's definitely, the model is growing. I think some of these really low price tools, like to get a financial planning tool for like $7 a month versus paying, $500 a month for an e-money, something like that.
Right. That makes sense. So sounds like, you believe that the AI note takers maybe have been extended a little too far, lots of new entrants, and probably need to see some consolidation there. That's probably maybe some of the risk there, as some of them will probably go away. How many AI note takers can you have that are specific to wealth management? We talked about some CRMs and some other kind of expensive or cheap tools. You mentioned I've seen you talk about this tool. I think, is it Libretto? Is that how you say it?
Libretto. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe kind of a different way of doing things. What's special about Libretto? Why are you excited about that?
Yeah, so Libretto is interesting because it's on the expensive side. It starts like $1,000 a month, I believe. But it just does things so differently that, you sell 1 or 2 clients and it's like paid for itself. What I like that it does is that it factors current value of your future income into your net worth. So let's say if you're going to make $150,000 a year for the next 30 years, it will add that like lump sum $3 million to your current net worth. So on paper, someone might have a net worth of even like nothing. But you say, well, you make a really good income. This is the current value of that future income. And I think that makes the conversation around protecting that income a whole lot more meaningful. And it also, like, if you're competing against an advisor who's like, this person doesn't have any money, there's no assets to manage, I really just need to throw them in some like easy portfolio and wait until they have some money to manage. That's one way to look at them. The other way to look at them is, no, their net worth is like $3 million, and who wouldn't want to sell a $3 million client? And and the amount of value you can give to the person that may not have any assets yet, but they actually have a ton of assets in the form of, like income. So that's one part of it. But there's a whole bunch of other features that are just unique in the way that they think about financial planning.
Interesting. So it sounds like Libretto, if you're willing to entertain the idea of dropping a little bit more coin, and you're maybe kind of bored or just not dissatisfied with how financial planning is done, or looking for a different way of looking at it.
Yeah,
Libretto is something that you need to take a look at.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Joe, as we're kind of winding down here, I want to give you an opportunity to just talk about something that's on your mind, or, hey, guys, go look at this tool, or, you're the guy that's kind of seeing the latest stuff coming out. And maybe you want to talk a minute about 2025, what you really think is kind of the next step. Is this tool small right now, but it's interesting? Give me a couple of picks for flyers, of, hey, this is really interesting and no one's heard of it. 2025 might be its year. You give me 4 tools and one of them maybe end up being good, but maybe give me a few flyers of what's coming.
Okay. I'll start with my favorite. School, which is a community tool. I think that so you pick a very specific niche, let's say Chick-fil-A franchise owners. If you start a free community for Chick-fil-A franchise owners, first of all, you can probably get a list of them super easy, find their contact information, speak directly to them in your content and on LinkedIn, then invite them to your free community where they get to hang out with other Chick-fil-A franchise owners. You show them the value you can provide, maybe tax savings or succession planning or something like that, and then sell them into your services. So I think school is great for community, like a free group funnel. I think it's also great if you want to make it like a paid community, like Trent's doing with the Retirement Planning Club. But the tool is growing like crazy, and it's outpacing its competitors by leaps and bounds. It's been fascinating to watch.
So school is you're really thinking of it as kind of a marketing way. You create a community, you add value to this community. Some people have done this. It's basically a more sophisticated and more empowered and specific way of doing this than Facebook. Because some people are doing this on Facebook. They create a group on Facebook and get people to join the group and add value there. So it's kind of it's a marketing system. And some folks on school, they'll have multiple communities where they'll kind of have their top of a funnel community that's free.
Right.
And then for those that want to take the next step, they can have a monthly charge. And, as an advisor, you can do both. And then obviously you would have them to become a client. And that's the next step, after your free community. So that's an interesting thought on marketing. It's more of a time investment, right, than just spending the money, because it's cheap to get started. Right. And then you've got to think about, okay, who's going to run this and how they're going to do that. What else?
Yeah. So school is great. I think for that, I suppose marketing is what I think about mostly. The next one would be like an email newsletter. So you basically have your niche, and then you want to get your niche into something tighter. And that could be a community. It could be an email newsletter. The tools I really like are Beehive and Substack. Mm-hmm. I was all gung-ho on Substack. Sorry, not Substack. On Beehive this past year, and a whole bunch of other people in the industry are using it. But then I found Substack has a social aspect to it. So as opposed to just the email newsletter part, there's now almost like a Twitter-like feed of other people's newsletters or content that you can interact with. So it's becoming more of an email newsletter social media platform. So that's really cool. And Substack also has a way to take payments. So you can use, like school, you could almost use it to make revenue as well. A third one is Supergrow. It's called supergrow.ai, I believe. If you're really focused on LinkedIn marketing and you want to add a bunch of followers, connections, grow your niche on LinkedIn, Supergrow has a way. It does a ton of different things. It's interesting. There's these tools that have like 17 features, and they're worth it just for one feature.
Wow.
And the one feature I feel like it's worth it for is engagement lists. So let's say you have a niche of 1,000 people. pick on Chick-fil-A franchise owners again. You got 1,000 Chick-fil-A franchise owners. You find them all on LinkedIn. You have their LinkedIn URLs. You plug that list of people into Supergrow, and then every day you log into Supergrow, and it will serve up all their latest posts.
Wow.
So then you can comment and like and engage from within Supergrow, or you can click to open it in LinkedIn, engage on LinkedIn, and come back and look at the next post. But instead of scrolling a feed and like trying to decide what you want to interact with, you have a list of like, these are the exact people that I want to be interacting with. And I do it every single day in an incredibly time efficient manner because you're not even on LinkedIn. So if you're into LinkedIn marketing, I would say use Supergrow.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And those are not, those are not advisor specific tools. I think some of those things are, we tend to, we go to the conferences and we get the ads and things like that are specific to advisors. And we forget that there's some really cool stuff out there that has nothing to do with advisors that advisors can use. So those things are great to hear, Joe. Well, Joe, this has been fun. I'll put a few of your stuff, some of the things you talked about with Joe's lists and some of the things he's done with value lists and stuff like that. We'll put that in the show notes for you guys. But yeah, go follow Joe on LinkedIn if you want to keep up with some of the latest in tech. Joe, appreciate you being on the show. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. All right.